is Halloween, this is Halloween.
Happy Halloween!
Halloween, baby!
I want to break free!
Happy Halloween! I've lit my black candles, drawn a pentagram, and sacrificed a paperback to the YouTube algorithm. Today we are sampling all kinds of horror. Body horror, cosmic horror, psychological horror, and the worst horror of all, my opinions. So let's get going. I've got a whole bunch of different type of horror books for y'all. We've got The Film You're About to See by Hayley Newland. This was an ARC from NetGalley. It's 1959 in Corn, Leiden, Indiana, and the local drive-in is throwing their first ever Dusk Till Dawn spooktacular. Think B-movie monsters, cheap popcorn, and an ungodly amount of vomit bags, with a hearse parked under the screen for ambiance.
Bask in the ambience. Basking in the ambience.
June and her friends show up expecting fake blood and plastic skeletons. But when the audience's scream stops sounding fun and starts sounding like actual mortal terror, things get dicey. Is it a gimmick with really committed method actors? Or did something crawl off the screen and into the parking lot? June, our lovely girl June, also has a bit of ESP in that she can see things before they happen and predicted her own grandmother's horrible demise. Unfortunately, this didn't work for me at all. It felt like it was either written for middle graders or by middle graders. They used words like jeepers and baloney. The plot essentially is that a bunch of townies go to a retro horror movie drive-through while an alien kills them all because it thrives off hysteria. And besides the modus operandi of the creature getting people to bash other people's heads in, the horror was quite tame. This just really did not read like an adult book. And I do get that the author was going for a very playful and pulpy ode to 1950s horror films, which were mentioned heavily, but it just came off as feeling a little bit silly to me. I think personally you're better off reading a Goosebumps horror book if this is the vibe that you want. I'm going to rate all these horror books on a scare factor of 1 to 5 Jack Skellingtons. This gets a 2 out of 5 Jack Skellingtons because the creature did kill people in physically violent ways. But otherwise, I don't know. It's more like a 1.5 for being for real, but I'm not going to split Jack's head in half. All right, the next book I read was Seed by Anya Alborn. After a near fatal car crash, Jack Winter's daughter, Charlie, begins behaving in disturbing and inhuman ways. As her personality shifts, Jack realizes the dark presence from his childhood has returned to haunt his family. This is a Southern Gothic terror about how the monsters we run from in childhood have a way of finding us again. Jack is a shit main character. Oh my god. He knows for a fact that his daughter is being possessed by the same demon douche that used to wear his own body like a condom while it fucked over his whole life. And yet, this man does nothing. And on top of that, even worse than doing nothing, he actively gaslights his family, especially his wife, about it, just for good measure. There were also multiple on-page animal killings in this book that just didn't feel necessary to me. Once again, I don't like it if an author has to resort to harming animals in order to make it horrifying. That's just a cheap trick to me. Overall, this was just a very generic possession horror story. Scare factor, I'm giving it 2 out of 5 Jacks. The scare factor was mostly the violent killings. And then I picked up Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. I first started listening to the audiobook that was Jerry Robbins and the Colonial Radio Players, and I realized very quickly that they were only reading dialogue and doing the most awful sound effects, like people walking. And then I quickly switched over to the one that was narrated by Christian Rummel. And then I switched over to the book because with Ray Bradbury's writing, I don't think it serves to listen. It's one that you have to read with your eyeballs.
By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes. 2
small town boys discover that the creepiest thing to roll into town isn't a storm. It's the sinister travelling carnival where the Ferris wheel is basically a time machine. The mirror maze eats your soul. And the ringmaster is a really creepy, scary dude. Cue friendship, father-son bonding, and enough spooky Midwest autumn vibes to fill a pumpkin patch. This is a dark carnival ride through small-town America, where childhood innocence collides with the hungry shadows of desire. The two boys, Jim and Will, stumble upon a travelling carnival whose siren song is mostly heard by men and who promises to grant your heart's deepest wish at the price of your soul. Led by the eerie Mr. Dark, the carnival thrives on the ache of regret, the itch for youth, and the fear of time's passing. Bradbury's prose is very lush and filled with fever dream sentences that feel like autumn leaves caught in a whirlwind. You really have to slow down to suck on the words like a candied apple because it is dense and hard to get through. I also just felt like some sentences did not make actual sense, but he does capture the electric hum of October nights, the sweetness and terror of being 13, and the horror of adults who would give anything to undo the years etched in their faces. The novel is as much about temptation and mortality as it is about haunted carousels and sinister carnies. It's a meditation on friendship, coming of age, fatherhood, and the eternal tug-of-war between light and shadow. It's also a strong reminder to never trust carnivals that roll into town at midnight and offer free rides. I feel like this could have been shaved down quite a bit. It felt very bloated with the amount of descriptive purple prose, so it was quite rambly and slow. But I honestly believe that we are only as old as we think we are. We're all still young at heart, my dudes. We're all still young at heart. For scare factor, I gave this a 1 out of Jack Skellington's. It's meant for middle graders. Even though Mr. Dark is sinister, I never really worried about the boys' life. I'm going to sneeze. I'm going to say too, it is really fucking hard to speak in a mustache. I then picked up The Mist by Stephen King. A storm knocks out the power, so everyone decides to go on a target run. Bad news! The parking lot is now wrapped in a murder fog, full of nightmare Pokemon. Inside the convenience store, people start losing it. Half the crowd turns into a doomsday church, and the other half just wants to live long enough to get home. David's squad finally decides, you know what? Maybe a giant tentacle hellscape is better than this cult lady and her crazies. So they decide to make a run for it. And spoiler, The Mist has worse vibes than the store ever did. Cue cosmic horror and the collapse of social order. Survival is uncertain, hope is fragile, and the mist may never lift. Oh my god, guys, look. There's a reason I don't read a lot of retro, horror, sci-fi and the like, because it is dripping in misogyny and sexism. Women are objectified to the shithouse. This dude couldn't go 1 day, 24 hours without cheating on his wife. He's literally trapped in this store with his son, and yet he sees a lady with pretty green eyes and he's like, gotta tap that. Okay, Steve. Okay. So yeah, look, this wasn't for me, but the suspense was there. I'm giving it 3 out of 5 Jack Skellingtons. The monsters are terrifying. People were horribly murdered, and the dread and the fear was palpable. The next book I read was Withered Hill by David Barnett. This is an unsettling thriller that blends folkloric horror with contemporary suspense. I said that like I was going to continue on with that sentence. I'm not. That's the full stop. The novel alternates between 2 versions of Sophie Wickham. You have one who is trapped in a sinister, almost mythic Lancashire village, and the other is navigating the chaos of modern London. So inside Sophie is a naked amnesiac girl who wakes up in a pagan festival forever village where the maypole dances you, and everyone smiles too much, and the trees are plotting something. And then outside, London Sophie is hungover, swiping wrong on Tinder, and now getting stalker DMs from either a ghost, a cult, or even worse, her ex. This dual perspective amplifies the sense of disorientation. You have Sophie's amnesia in the woods, mirroring her confusion in the cité. Themes of identity, memory, and the pull of the past intertwine. The pacing occasionally teeters between languid descriptions in the village and frenetic chaos in the city, which can feel really jarring. Bro, this book felt so male gazy. Sophie. The female characters feel like they were written by men. Because guys, women just like to get drunk with their girlies and then bang random strange guys and then max out our credit cards on like really expensive lingerie, because that's what we do. It was just giving, you know, girls being bad is bad. Don't be a bad girl, and you know what constitutes being a bad girl guy. And then the dual timelines killed pacing, and there were so many questions that were left that were unanswered, like so many. The most interesting part of the book, it's like, okay, tell me more about this order that was trying to protect Sophie. Oh no, you're not going to. Cool, great. And I never ever again want to hear the phrase, "You put the lead in my pencil." I'm giving this a 2 out of 5 jacks. It's mostly the fear of being essayed, to be honest with you. Then I read Something is Killing the Children by James Tinian IV. In the town of Archer's Peak, something is eating kids. And only one person, Erica Slaughter, hunts the monsters that no one else can see. So Archer's Peak is a small American town that is being quietly devoured by the things adults refuse to believe in. Because if you can't see it, it doesn't exist. And then enter Erica Slaughter, mysterious, dead-eyed, wearing a bandana with teeth, and carrying a stuffed octopus that might actually be a real-life Labubu. She's the kind of character who doesn't explain herself because explanations would only make things worse. The dialogue in this is minimal. The art is relied upon to carry the story and the dread. You've got Del Adira's scratchy, shadow-heavy panels that make everything look 1 second away from collapse, while Mikel Muerto's colouring, sickly greens and bruised reds, feels like it's decomposing under fluorescent lights. It's brutal and bloody, but the real horror isn't the monsters. It's the silence of adults who refuse to believe the kids. There is an emotional undercurrent here. You've got grief, guilt, and the cost of being the one person who does the dirty work that nobody else will. Erica Slaughter is the perfect modern horror hero. She's stoic, morally grey, and perpetually exhausted. This was scary, but mostly sad. It's Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets It. The idea is very cool. And naturally, I want to know more about Erica. Okay, she's a badass bitch and I want more of her. But the story paneling in this drove me nuts. Sometimes it would read across both pages. So you're going across both pages, and then sometimes it would stick to its own page. And because I didn't know what it was going to do, I naturally would try to read across both panels and then realize, fuck, that makes no sense. And that drove me bonkers. I wasn't really a fan of the illustration style, unfortunately. I did find a lot of the scenes were hard to visually decipher and make out. And the ending, it didn't make sense to me, okay? I don't believe that the order would agree to those terms because you can't guarantee everyone's continued silence. Let's be real, guys. The book also raises a whole lot of questions that you don't get answers to in this first installment. I would assume maybe you get answers in the following ones, but in this one, there was a lot of things I'm like, I need to know more about this. For scare factor, I'm giving it a 3 out of 5 jacks. The monsters are disgusting. They're ripping children in half. All right, you got kids screaming with their guts hanging out. Like, it's pretty visually horrific. But because, like I said, the illustration style was hard for me to see, I wasn't getting the full impact. I've got to go check my trade 1 second. That was a good one. I'm having a great week. Okay, the next book I picked up is Sour Candy by Keelan Patrick Burke. In this one, Phil Pendleton goes from normal guy to unwilling dad. Let's do that. After a cursed encounter at a grocery store, settles him with a son who isn't human. And now he's stuck in a nightmare of forced parenthood, public tantrums, sleepless nights, demonic candy, and no escape. This nails the dread by blending everyday frustrations of parenting with cosmic, skin-crawling horror. Adam, the not son, is both ordinary and monstrous. A child whose tantrums feel like they could shatter reality. The novella wastes no time, zero, zilch, none, in dragging both Phil and us, the readers, into a situation that feels inescapable. What makes this work is how plausible it feels underneath all the supernatural stuff, the suffocation of obligation, the loss of control, the way an ordinary life can vanish in an instant. It's a story about being trapped by forces you can't fight, whether that's family, fate, or something far worse hiding behind a bag of sour candy. It is grim, claustrophobic, bleak. Sour Candy is the parenting horror no baby book will prepare you for. I felt that Phil acted in a way that was very, very realistic, which made his plight even harder to stomach. The novella, however, did feel a bit underbaked though. I love a short story, don't get me wrong, but I felt like this was a little bit rushed and I wanted to know more about the eldritch beings that were in this. But the idea was very, very cool. And as someone who doesn't eat hard candy, I feel very safe knowing that I won't end up like Phil. This gets a 3 out of 5 jacks for me. The fear is mostly in the feeling of being trapped and the eldritch horror gods. And then I read The Scold Crow by Grace Daly. This was an arc from NetGalley. This is about a queer cutie with chronic pain who returns to her hometown, gets stalked by a crow, haunted by discount Jesus, and gifted frozen body parts like it's some kind of macabre HelloFresh subscription. The Scold Crow is not your typical standard haunted house horror. You've got gothic dread in the very ordinary reality of living with chronic pain, self-doubt, and the long echo of abuse. Briege is a self-deprecating, weed-edible eating protagonist who is both relatable and deeply unreliable, not because she's scheming, but because she's been trained by family, by illness, by circumstance, to mistrust her own body and mind. Every creak in the house, every flutter of wings, every impossible reappearing painting could be supernatural or just the relentless weight of trauma pressing down. A crow that stalks you like a jilted ex, body parts popping up in bread loaves. These moments are both absurd and terrifying, capturing the kind of surreal horror only those who've lived inside chronic pain or generational abuse will understand. This is horror as catharsis, horror as confrontation, horror that never lets you fully exhale. Daly doesn't give you tidy answers, and the result is unsettling, jagged, and honest. The Scold Crow will sit with you like a shadow at the edge of your vision, never quite flying away. This is very much about chronic illness and the distrust of the body, the horror of being dismissed, disbelieved, or gaslit when your pain has no proof. It's also about motherhood and abuse, the double bind of caring for the very figure who has harmed you. So with these two things, it was right up my alley. There's also some Catholic guilt thrown in, as well as some Irish mythology, and a really, really good kitty named Coo. Obviously the themes I could heavily relate to, but for me the pacing in the beginning was a little bit slow, and I was very frustrated with Briege, who didn't use technology, because in the case where you're not sure if what you're seeing is real or you're hallucinating, babes, technology exists. Use it to prove or disprove your hallucinations. You can FaceTime a friend and be like, hey, babes, are you seeing what I'm seeing here? Like, there are ways to get confirmation. And she didn't bother to try and do that. And I was like, no, babes, you got to at least try. You got to at least try so you can make sure, yes, I'm being cuckoo, or no, this is for real happening right now. So that, dude, I had to suspend my disbelief with that. That was a bit too much, but obviously she needed to not get confirmation of what was happening. Otherwise the book would be over very quickly. There was a lot about this book that did remind me of The House of Good Bones by T. Kingfisher, but this was top tier chronic illness rep. However, the twist at the end just didn't work for me, guys. I thought the ending was a bit of a letdown. Justice didn't feel served, in my opinion. But bird's the word, and the word is childhood trauma. For scare factor, I'm giving this a 3 out of 5 jacks. It's mostly unsettling, paranoia-filled terror. Then I read The Divine Farce by Michael S. Graziano. This is about 3 strangers who get the ultimate escape room experience. No chairs, no light, mystery liquid food, and floor drainage. And yet somehow these 3 still manage to discuss love, hate, and the weird optimism of humanity. The Divine Farce is a bizarre, claustrophobic meditation on humanity and philosophical allegory that traps 3 strangers in a concrete tube, dripping liquid pear juice down the walls for sustenance, and a mesh grate for the floor draining of their excrement. On the surface, it reads like a surreal Survivor endurance test, but Graziano layers in surprisingly profound reflections on love, hatred, and the human capacity to find meaning, even when circumstances are utterly dehumanizing. The strength of this book lies in its absurdist premise and psychological intensity. The characters' interactions oscillate between humor, desperation, and existential inquiry, keeping readers both off balance and deeply engaged. While the narrative is deliberately confining and repetitive, this mirrors the oppressive environment and reinforces the book's philosophical undertones. If you're looking for a conventional plot or action, you will be frustrated by this. But if you appreciate darkly humorous, philosophical, and surreal explorations of the human condition, then this book is a mesmerizing, if utterly unsettling experience. Hey Sylvie. The main character to me felt like gas in that he expands to fill whatever container he's in and then breaks his way out to find a bigger one. This, to me, felt like a combination of I Who Would Never Know Men, A Short Stay in Hell, and Piranesi. It's got a lot of existential dread, monotonous routine, and the drive of human curiosity and exploration. There's one thing though, guys. There's one thing that I have to point out for unbelievability. In this book, food is scarce, and humans go about stashing biscuits like squirrels, you know, they're shoving them in their mouth. And they show a woman cramming the biscuits up her bunghole. And I'm sorry, you're telling me that a woman would choose to use the back door option instead of her pussy pocket? No, there's no way in hell, man. Straight, any woman out there, if they had to choose between the two holes, pussy pocket all the way, my dudes, pussy pocket all the way. But it is what it is. It is what it is. So I'm giving this a 4 out of 5 Jack Skellingtons because this, like, I very much struggle with reading psychological horror because it doesn't end once the book finishes. You know, I will sit there and in bed at night just thinking about if I was stuck in this terrifying situation that just feels never ending, eternal. Oh my God, I want to vomit because I also have claustrophobia, so this is like an autist's nightmare. And then I read The Thief of Always by Clive Barker. This is about a bored kid who thinks he's scored an endless vacation full of cake, candy, and Halloween every day, only to find out that the magical inn he checked into runs on stolen childhoods and bad vibes. Now he's got to fight a cranky old house demon who wants to eat his soul like it's dessert. Clive Barker takes the classic be careful what you wish for tale and cranks it up to delightfully creepy. This is part fairy tale, part haunted house ride, part existential crisis for bored kids everywhere. Harvey Swick just wants out of his dull life, but instead of summer camp, he stumbles into a nightmare disguised as paradise. The book is spooky, but not too gruesome. It is perfectly creepy for younger readers and still clever enough for adults to enjoy. One moment you're in a dream holiday and the next you're facing monsters made of shadows and an ageless villain who treats children like they're batteries. It's a cautionary tale about temptation, growing up too fast, and why free cake forever is always a red flag. And maybe going to school ain't the worst thing ever. This is like the Phantom Tollbooth. If you like the Phantom Tollbooth, but you want something a bit more scary, then this is your shit. I would have devoured this as a child. This would have been absolutely my thing. I have to mention though, there is an on-page cat death with Jesus Christ, guys, in a kid's book. Like that sucked. However, I'm only giving it. I was going to give it a 1 out of 5 Jacks, but I think I'm gonna upgrade that to a 2. Like, a cat is fucking murdered and the children are killed, so I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5 Jacks. And then I read The Haar by David Sodergren. This is about a greedy developer who wants to bulldoze a Scottish village, but then a spooky fog rolls in. A spooky fog rolls in, serving vengeance, madness, and gore like it's a daily catch of the day, locals included. You have Muriel McAuley, who is a lifelong resident and the heart of the novel. This is a woman rooted to her land, watching modernity threaten to erase not just homes, but history. Her refusal to leave sets the tone. It's a quiet defiance that resonates even as the fog itself rises like a character, equal parts savior and executioner. The battle between Witch Haven's residents and the outside developers reflects a timeless clash, rooted tradition against the relentless march of modernization. It's communal dread and lots of splatter. The Haar is a visceral, sea-soaked fable about home, history, and the monstrous bargains that bind people to place. This is a gore-drenched folk horror fairy tale, And a beautiful ode to love, the land, and grannies. This is what I wanted the blob to be, which was meant to be a romance between a woman and a blob. This is a romance between a woman and a blob. I was here for it. I was voting for it. I'm giving this a 2 out of 5 Jack Skeletons. The horror is just slasher fest murdering, pretty much. The next book I read was Hellmouth by Giles Christian. In the absence of light, darkness prevails. This is about a bunch of mercenaries who take a church job and quickly learn that Bohemian forests are basically nature's horror. Hellmouth is a gripping medieval thriller that plunges readers into the shadowy heart of 14th century Bohemia. We follow Gallion and his band of mercenaries on a mission that is as morally complex as it is bloody. The novel balances the relentless tension, dark intrigue, and occasional flashes of humanity, making it both a page-turner and a study in brutality and unexpected redemption of its era. Fans of historical fiction with a grim atmospheric edge will find themselves engrossed from the first page to the last. This is inspired on a real-life place, Huska Castle, in the Czech Republic. I was gripped from start to finish. I think I have a bit of a thing for medieval horror, and this delivered on that front. However, the ending felt unfinished. The climax was very quick, my dudes. A flash in the pan. I absolutely believe that this does have an apt comparison to Between Two Fires, except this one has no hope. There's no hope in this one. I'm giving this a 4 out of 5 Jack Skeletons because this was actually horrific and scary. I was like, don't go in the fucking hole, guys. Don't go in the hole. But they went in the hole. I think things went pretty bad from there. So that's all the books I read for this Halloween horror vlog. Only the final girl survives. And apparently, it's me. Barely. That is all the horror chaos that I can handle. See you guys in the afterlife. Or, next Sunday. The perfume that I am pairing with this horror vlog is Nocturnal Tuberose by Heretic Parfum. This has neroli, linalool, Sichuan pepper, tuberose, ylang ylang, jasmine, rose, gardenia, orange blossom, ambret seed, vetiver, and cistus. This is a hypnotic nocturne, an opulent floral bouquet wrapped in whispers of spice and earth, evoking moonlit gardens heavy with heady blossoms and shadowed mystery. This smells like Morticia Adams. And the book that I would pair with this is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, a classic gothic suspense with a haunting, enveloping atmosphere that mirrors the fragrance's balance of light and shadow. That's all, folks. Enjoy your Halloween, and until next time, stay horrific, Star Child.
It's Halloween.